I remember when I attended mainstream school when I was young, all the focus was on English. And then when I attended a deaf school, all our focus and all our tuition was in sign language, British Sign Language. Looking back, I wonder, why didn't we focus on both? Well, to find out more about this subject, our trustee, Paul, is interviewing Dani Sive, who is the head teacher of Frank Barnes School in London. And their focus is on bilingualism. Take a look. Hello there. Let me introduce myself. My name is Paul, and I'm a trustee at Deaf Unity. Maybe you can introduce yourself. Hello everyone, my name is Dani Sive, and this is my sign name. Pleased to meet you. Thanks. So I'm the head teacher of Frank Barnes Deaf School in central London. Lovely. Yeah, so Frank Barnes is a specialist primary school catering for children from the ages of 2 to 11. I've been a head teacher there for 5 years, but I've actually worked there for over 20, so I'm very experienced with what's going on there. Great. So Frank Barnes School, how large of a school is it? How many children do you have? Well, we are a small school. We have around 36 pupils from the ages of 2 to 11, and we'd have maybe 4 to 5, maybe 6 or 7 in each class group. But it really is a wonderful school. I'm really happy there. We can see that. We can see that you enjoy being there. So maybe we could get started with the prepared questions that I have, and it'd be great to hear your experiences. Feel free to explain about your work at Frank Barnes and share your knowledge with everyone. So if I ask the first question that I have here, maybe you can briefly tell us about Frank Barnes School and the education philosophy of bilingualism that you use there. Yeah, so we're the only primary school in London that follows this philosophy, the philosophy of bilingualism. And what that means is that we treat the two languages as equal value. So in our case, that's British Sign Language and English. So our aim, our objective, is that children will gain a level of fluency, aptitude, in both BSL and English. So BSL is the language of their community, and it gives them a foundation in language. But then they also acquire English, so they can read and write or talk and hear well if they can. And the two languages really work together, and they learn them in parallel. So our objective is that they learn the vital skills of fluency in both. To be honest, it's not an easy objective because every child is different in their skills in language. Maybe they acquired BSL later. Maybe it's their home language. But the objective is that when they leave Frank Barnes School, they have a measure of aptitude and they can use both with confidence. They can use BSL to access their community, to unlock their identity, to have conversations, to express themselves and their emotions. But they're also equipped with a level of aptitude in English, which is an important life skill. They can further their education. They can live independently. And that's why we value both languages equally. Thank you for explaining that. Well, my second question is, why do you believe that this bilingual philosophy is so effective, and how do you embed English into the curriculum? Maybe you can tell us about that. Sure, well, deaf children have the right for an accessible and rich learning environment. BSL is a visual language, and deaf people need to use that in order to acquire language. So bilingual philosophy really focuses on gaining a strong foundation in a primary language. So understanding the world, being able to communicate, understanding new concepts in their first language, BSL, and then learning a second language. And really the evidence is out there that proves why this is warranted. If somebody has a weak first language, then they'll have a weak second language. But if they gain a strong fluency in their primary language, so again in our case BSL, if they use that as their foundation, their second language development will be so much more proficient. So really the first language helps and underpins the learning of the second language. So their first language, L1 language, is BSL, and the second language, English, grows along with that. But really, no one ever has a fluency, an equal level of fluency in both languages, their first and second. One is always behind the other. So in our case, the strongest is BSL. And when you look at bilingualism, it really is important and helps with memory, problem solving. There's so many benefits to having two languages. And you have to consider, deaf children, they have the same right that hearing children do to direct teaching and learning. So many deaf children have to struggle lip reading their teacher or going through a third party like a CSW or an interpreter. But we're able to provide that direct teaching and learning experience in the same way that a hearing child would in school. So there's that equity there. But of course, the two languages are different. English, when we're talking about reading and writing, is obviously based on speaking and listening. Whereas BSL is a visual language. We use signing space, typography, hand shapes. So the way that we bridge the two languages is not through another language, but we use like a contact language, SSE, sign supported English, which isn't a language in itself. So if we're reading something, we'll sign the signs in an English word order. It's not proper BSL and it's not conceptually accurate, but we're bridging the two languages and we're able to translate meaning and the skills from one to the other. So it's the same with when we're writing. You can't write in a BSL order, but learning the rules of English can underpin their language skills, and that helps feed back into their BSL. Thank you for that explanation. It's true that the two languages are different, right? English and BSL, we have a different grammar. That's right, yeah. So yeah, we might say, I'm going to go home, whereas in BSL, we just say, go home. It's a really different structure, isn't it? So you have to make sure that they gain a fluency in both how to sign that, but also how to write that. Yeah, that's right. So it's important that children, they understand that those two languages are different. They're distinct, rich languages. BSL has its own semantic and grammatical rules. And the same with English. English is a separate language. So we don't merge the two languages, creating a weakness in both languages. We strive for a fluency in BSL and also a fluency in English to an equal degree. That's fascinating. Thank you. Well, the third question is, what evidence is out there that bilingualism, this approach, is an effective way of teaching? Well, I think the evidence is out there. For example, if you look at children who are bilingual in two languages, in spoken languages, maybe they speak English and French, say, the research and the evidence shows that so many benefits come along with having those two languages to do with memory, cognitive function, executive skills, problem solving. There's so many different benefits from having two languages. And the same goes for deaf children who acquire two languages, British Sign Language and English. Having those two languages supports language acquisition, cognitive function, executive skills, problem solving, memory, all the things that we've talked about. So deaf people, they have a right to accessible language and also a right to gaining English to help them with their life skills and their future, maybe further studies, for them to be independent in doing so. They have a right to that. So that's really what underpins the bilingual approach, is those kind of benefits. So you say that children are able to develop their logical understanding, able to deal with problems, maybe when challenges come up, having that fluency in those two languages, seeing them as two discrete languages, help them engage with people, to be able to communicate, to be able to make sure that they understand things and that they are understood, being able to do that through English. And so many hearing people, they see deaf people not understanding, but having that discrete BSL as a language, they're able to understand that, I recognize that as their language because they have that fluency. So learning English prepares them for challenges that might come ahead in the future. I wish I'd had that when I was young. think when I used to struggle so much. I remember with my GCSE English, I was so behind. I had to do so much work to keep up with everyone, and really to the detriment of my BSL. I did get mixed up in my head a bit. So trying to draw that line between the two languages. That's right. And really having that access to a rich language in BSL helps the development of your identity, with your community, with your self-esteem, recognizing that there are people out there that share that language with you. It's so important to be a gateway to the community. Having that rich language helps you be confident to take on challenging situations and learn from them, as opposed to being isolated or withdrawing as a person. So that's why we believe so strongly in a bilingual approach for deaf children. I know for myself, when I was at school, I went to an oral school and I struggled so much. Constantly lip reading, trying to work out what people were saying, always second guessing whether I'd understood, and relying on lip reading, that little bit of residual hearing that I had. But then later having that access to sign language, not having to read the lips or struggle to hear, but having that access to a full, rich language, it made such a big difference to me. Yeah, I remember for myself, I went to a mainstream school. We had deaf children and hearing children mixed together. I actually never went to a deaf school. Really? Yeah, it was a different experience for me. I went to a mainstream school, but we had deaf children there, and we had teachers of the deaf and CSWs. And I know we were lucky in terms of having that access to sign language. We had our teachers who knew sign language. My primary school, I didn't get along so well. And I didn't really focus on English so much. I just thought, I can sign and that's great. But when I moved to secondary school, which was again mainstream, it really made an impact on me how important it is to step up my game, as it were, with English. There's so many challenges preparing to go out into the world. English is such a vital skill. So I realized I had to catch up and really dedicate myself to that, get support to build those skills and really become confident in my own abilities. And I had to said, if I'm not getting quality education, then I need to move schools. The LEA are going to have to pay for it. My education is so important. And we were able to get through it eventually. But having that fluency, that strength of both languages, two distinct languages, but being able to understand and learn in both languages, it really has been such a benefit, being able to travel and do different things, communicate with people. It's not easy. That's right. And you think about yourself, maybe you're at primary school. Did you have deaf role models? I did. Really? I didn't at all. And that's why the children at Frank Barnes School are so lucky. We have so many deaf staff and staff that can sign. We provide those role models and really promote that can-do attitude. There's none of that condescending, negative, you can't do it attitude in our school. It's a really positive learning environment. And when deaf children see a deaf teacher, they realize, do you know what, I can do that. And that's why this model of education is so important, and having those role models is so important in the development for children. That's fantastic. Well, how do you strive to create a thriving learning environment at Frank Barnes? Well, it's like I said, maybe I'm repeating myself, but it's really important to have that can-do attitude, to be positive, to provide role models. We have obviously hearing staff members, but they can all sign. And there's that fluency of communication, that ease of communication, and that's just so paramount. Having that clear understanding, being concise in communication, it really helps children flourish. There's so many problems if you don't understand in communication breakdowns, etc. And, I'm the head teacher, I oversee everything, but we're really careful when we bring in staff. We make sure that their signing is a vital skill. We don't want those breakdowns of communication in the classroom because they hold back children. So we want to create that thriving learning environment. And it really does come down to communication, that fluency of communication, that ease of communication. And that positive attitude, that's so important. Deaf children can't be put to the side, and they shouldn't be made to feel like that. They need to be shown and told that they can do something, and that can inspire them to strive for the future. So thinking about different levels of communication ability for children. Do you have that within Frank Barnes School? Yeah, that's right. All our children are deaf, but some have got additional needs as well. It could be cerebral palsy, it could be a physical disability, maybe they're late language learners, they could be visually impaired, a variety of different additional needs. But our staff are trained to accommodate all of those needs and ensure the deaf children are getting what they need in their education. We have so much additional training. We really are experts in deaf education, and also how to accommodate for additional needs, how to diversify our teaching, differentiate, make sure that we're able to make sure our teaching practices and everything are being done the right way. And that's why we take a student-centered approach in our teaching, make sure that things are flexible and each child is getting what they need. And that can be a real challenge, because in each classroom there could be so many different needs, such a variety. So it's working out how to make sure that the teaching activities, the resources, all of those are accessible and meeting the needs of each child. So that's why we make sure with our staffing that we are very careful, and we also make sure that the children have those role models in the classroom as well, and they can learn from each other. So we have children that are strong in language, and they're able to learn alongside those who maybe are not as strong in their learning. And it really teaches empathy, it teaches an understanding of the world. It really is it's a lovely thing. That's so nice. Well, moving on, just to ask, how has coronavirus affected teaching and learning? Have many struggled with the remote delivery of teaching? Yeah, of course. This last year with coronavirus, the school had to shut, and there really was a scrambling. Personally, I had great concerns over how we were going to adjust, but we decided we just had to get on with it. We had to adjust quickly and learn how to develop resources, how to make sure that children don't have gaps in their learning. And really, in the UK, we are lucky. We have access to good Wi-Fi. We're able to make sure that children had devices at home, laptops and tablets, that they can learn independently. And we've been teaching through Zoom. We use Zoom every day, and we have a reliance on that technology. And we've been encouraging children's parents to get involved too. With the first lockdown, we really had to become proficient in IT skills. Staff had a steep learning curve to make sure that our resources were accessible and appropriate. We had to pre-record ourselves and edit and use software and use learning environments. We use one called Seesaw, and it's brilliant. Everything's there. You can film yourself, you can download work, upload work, send videos, can make contact directly with the children and with their parents. We can communicate directly with our parents through that platform. The teacher can directly communicate with the child. It's been great. It's a fantastic resource. But in the same time, we're not in the classroom every day now with our children. So teachers, we have time. We've given them that freedom to also go and create resources. So BSL stories, translate books, and we've been able to build a library with the time that we have and this new technology to really provide rich resources for our deaf children. They're loving the books. They're really fascinated and captivated by them. So in many ways, coronavirus has been awful and the associated difficulties, but there have been a lot of positives too, that kind of finding our way through it and learning about this remote way of working. And we've really seen that it can be successful, this use of IT, embedding it within our work. So looking back, there's been a lot of positives, a lot of things that we've learned. And now obviously we're in a second lockdown. So children, they're comfortable with engaging in their learning independently. So they can open up their laptops, they can sign to us, we can upload their work, we can give them things to do, we can mark and have that interaction all through that environment. So it's been really good, and hopefully we'll preserve that going forward. That's so nice to hear. I'm so glad it's been a positive experience for you. And really, I take my hat off to all of you. Much respect to yourself and to your staff, and obviously the leadership within your school, to be able to navigate your way through it and to really plant those seeds within the deaf children. Oh, thank you. So I just ask, as a head teacher, just having that responsibility for the leadership for the school, how have you kind of navigated through the challenges of coronavirus? What lessons have you taken away from it? Well, you're right, it has been a challenge, but to be honest, I'm really lucky that I've got an amazing SMT, senior management team, and we work so well together. And we've been making sure that the teachers have got the support that they need. We've been communicating with parents to see what they need, our governors, and just making really clear that we're not dropping our expectations. We're keeping our standards high, and we're going to kind of emulate or provide that example for the children to emulate, that we can do. If challenges come up, that's fine. We can get over them. And obviously, I oversee the school with everything going on. But I try to give the autonomy to the staff so that they can use their skills and develop their skills. And I've got a fantastic deputy head. She's a wizard when it comes to IT. So for creating resources and that kind of thing, she's been a fantastic support as well. And we also have team leaders. So we have people who are knowledgeable about this learning environment, Seesaw, and they've been able to train other staff as well and take the lead in that. And it really has been fantastic in terms of the leadership in the school, just seeing everybody just get on with it. We know that we need to support the staff, and they know that they can ask us for support if they need it. So we've been sharing experience, sharing learning. And of course, I am predominantly responsible for liaising with parents as well. So making sure that parents have got what they need. They've been struggling. So we've been able to give extra support to them and offer any assistance that they need. Oh, wow. That is really, it's fantastic to hear. It really does give me goosebumps. It's great to hear that you've been able to get along with everything. But I have to focus on these questions. So what advice would you give to teachers or to parents over how to keep their children learning during this time? Yeah, it can be difficult because, children, they're often fluent in BSL, whereas their parents aren't. So the children are usually stronger in the language than the parents. So we've been trying to encourage parents as much as possible to try and communicate, to improve in their skills. And we have a home communication project. We have a family communication support worker who's been working with families at this time remotely, encouraging parents to sign and to use their sign language. And it's been a challenge because obviously most parents, their first language is English. It's not BSL. And they've been struggling to learn. And there's that disparity because deaf children are fluent in sign language. So it's trying to sort of get them to work together and come together to communicate and support each other. So we've been setting up resources, activities, worksheets, making sure that they're fully accessible. So the children don't need to rely on their parents to explain things to them. They're able to learn independently because we know that if we give something to them and they don't understand, if they then ask their parents can't sign well enough to explain it. So we know the problems associated with that, and we also know how to make things accessible. So that's what we try to do. But as I said, we keep our high expectations. So it doesn't matter whether we're in the classroom or learning remotely. We keep that can-do attitude. We keep those high expectations. We want the children to keep learning independently and to keep developing. So just to ask, throughout this coronavirus experience, and like you said about the challenges for deaf children, thinking about the school day, maybe 8:30 through to 3-4 o'clock, the school time, when they're having that teaching, obviously through your learning environment, through Zoom, when the school day finishes, how do you ensure they're getting what they need emotionally, that kind of pastoral care, if the parents can't communicate with them? How are you accommodating for that during this time with coronavirus? Yeah, remote learning. We obviously keep to our school timetables, so 9 through to 3. We keep that structure within the day with our routine, and we keep a mix. So some are remote lessons through Zoom, Some lessons we pre-record and upload that children can watch independently, and we have activities associated with that. But we also arrange class times on Zoom when they can just talk to each other and have that peer time. And we have different activities throughout the day. We have one-to-one time with staff, and they can have one-to-one teaching, maybe to catch up on things. But it's true, after school is an issue. When school day finishes at 3:30 and they all go home, it's like when we were face-to-face. A lot of children don't have deaf peers locally in their home environment that they can communicate with. But a lot of children, we're really lucky because a lot of them have their own devices. And so they're able to, the ones who are maybe 9, 10, 11 years old, they're able to text each other, they can call each other, they can FaceTime each other. So they still have that association. They're still mixing with each other. Obviously, they have it structured throughout the day, and we have time, as I said, on Zoom, and they can talk to each other, they can catch up, share news, say how they're feeling, things that are happening, share information, but they can also do that outside of school too. Oh, wow. Well, yeah, it's really important, isn't it, for children to have that after-school life as well, because it's not just about their education, it's about their mental health as well. So all these lessons learned, now in the second lockdown, hopefully children and parents can make a success of it. And obviously they've got you as the head teacher to ask for help. But it's parents' responsibility too, isn't it, to make sure that their children are being cared for with what they need. So what advice would you give to parents and teachers to make a success of remote learning? Well, I think for teachers, it's a new way of teaching through this remote medium. It's not as easy as being in a classroom. Live, face-to-face, classroom environment teaching is so different to being stuck on a camera, looking at a screen with just video panels in front of you, 2D. And, things like classroom management and behavior management can be a real challenge. But at the end of the day, it's about practicing, isn't it? So we try to keep our groups small and try to keep them focused. Deaf children are so easily distracted. Any child is easily distracted, but deaf children are worse. So we try to keep our groups quite small. And then for parents to really make sure that their children have access to devices and they're still keeping to that school schedule. They're getting up in the morning, they're brushing their teeth, they're getting dressed as if they were to go to school, but then they're sitting down at their desk. It's not a prolonged holiday where they can just use their devices in bed. Keeping that routine, keeping that structure is so important. We don't want children in bed using their devices. We want them, as I said, to get up, get ready for school and be there, be engaged, be present, as if they were going to school. So they're still in school, but they're just doing it from home. And I think that's for parents. We try to encourage parents to work with the teachers as well. Don't leave all of this to the teachers. Teachers, we're so busy, and it's not all our responsibility to make sure that the children are learning. It's the parents' responsibility too. So to work together, to cooperate. And it's not easy. So many parents have got maybe more than one child, or maybe they've got maybe not a very good Wi-Fi or only one device. Everyone's got their own problems and their own issues. So it's just working together to communicate expectations and see how we can meet those. So just thinking about that remote side and with parents. It's about keeping those core values, isn't it, right? So, like you said, it's at Frank Barnes School, you have your values, and it's preserving those throughout this, right? Yeah, I think our core values are, like I said, that can-do attitude, that positive attitude that deaf people are not limited. It's important we have access to language, access to information, to curriculum, to learning, and then we're able to do anything. Once you unlock the mind, we're able to do anything. So that's so important. And I think too, having deaf children, having role models, deaf role models, I think that's so valuable too. And as we're talking about bilingualism, that's a value too. Just all those things that we've talked about, having a fluency in English and in sign language. That's so important. We want children to become fluent in both and be equipped with both for what comes in the future. They're our core values. Well, obviously it's a real challenge, but like you said, you have to just get on with it, don't you? The new normal, work out how to work with parents, give children what they need, make sure they've got the technical side of things set up, and preserving those core values as a head teacher and making sure that children are not being left behind is so important, isn't it? So I mean, you're doing amazingly, and everything you explained to this interview, I'm dumbfounded. It's amazing to hear everything that you're doing, and I'm so impressed, and being able to get through this and to overcome the struggles, and to recognize what needs to be done and make sure that it's all working out. And we're prepared, aren't we, for a third lockdown or anything like that? No, don't say it. I hope we're not going to have a third lockdown. Well, I hope so. I hope we're not going to have one too. Children need to be in school, I believe. They miss each other, they miss their teachers, they miss signing with each other. Yeah, and I think, remote learning, staff and parents and children, we have benefited too. We've learned a new skill, and it's going to help us in the future, I think. Having this new proficiency in IT is amazing. We've never used it to this extent before. And now having it, embedded is really going to help us for the future. We're in a digital age. Everything's done on a computer now, and that's only going to increase. So all of us learning these skills along with the children, I think, is a great thing. I think it's really positive for deaf children. And, we've embraced that at Frank Barnes. We've been really lucky in the way that we've been able to absorb it into our teaching, and we're confident we'll be successful in the future. Yeah, well, I think I'm really confident with Frank Barnes. You'll continue to succeed, and the way that you've managed, I just think is a testament to your leadership as head teacher. Oh, thank you. There's a lot of potential, isn't there, for Frank Barnes, and going into the future, and the way that you've overcome with this remote situation, it really is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this interview and your time, and for doing this through Zoom. It's been fascinating for me. Well, thank you too. It's been really great to talk to you. Take care, stay safe. Bye-bye.
The UbiDuo communication device is used by hundreds of colleges and universities across the country as a preferred solution, in addition to interpreting and cart services, to maximize 100% communication access on campus. Incorporating the UbiDuo communication device at all face-to-face points throughout campus, along with the other communication access options, allows hearing staff to interact with deaf and hard of hearing employees and students at any given time. Colleges and universities use the device to support their staff and students at various locations on campus, such as the admissions office, public safety office, student disability office, campus life or student body office, library, hospital, infirmary, and health clinics, dormitories, or for students themselves to check out through a loaner program for tutoring sessions, in-class use, internships and community service, and more.
The UbiDuo is extremely easy to use. Unfold the two halves and slide out the J-hooks to separate them. Tilt up the individual view screens and press the power button on each half. The device does not require internet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or cellular data to operate. The two halves automatically connect with each other through a low radio frequency. Within 3 seconds of turning the device on, you will see a split screen and are ready to have a conversation. The device displays in real time, so there is no pause or delay between when one person types and the other person sees it, allowing for a natural conversation speed. When finished, simply push the screens back down, turn each half off, secure the J-hooks, and fold up the device.